Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. Today we are talking termites. This is part 2. Hello, Esther. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric.
Fantastic. It is I'm assuming it's a beautiful day out in the on the West Coast.
You know, it's certainly feeling like fall here. Even though it's California and people don't think we have seasons, you can definitely feel it's changing from summer to fall for sure. It's a little overcast, a little rainy. The trees are changing color. It's actually quite lovely.
I bet it's beautiful. Fantastic. Okay, now not so fantastic. We're talking about termites. So this is part 2. Can you give us just a brief overview of what we spoke about last time, and then let's get right into today's topic.
Well, last time what we talked about were just what I call these financial termites, the things that undermine our financial stability without us necessarily even being aware of them. Mm-hmm. So over several of those, and I'm going to continue on with some more today.
All right. Where do we start?
Well, we ended actually last time talking about procrastination and how just deferring these decisions is really a termite because it uses up valuable time waiting. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that people do procrastinate, and especially for those in transition, there can often be a feeling of being overwhelmed with all the details that one has to navigate when one's life changes. Mm-hmm. And it is very hard to determine what is important to take care of now, what's important to set aside, but still needs to be done soon, and what can really be set aside for later. It can be very hard to prioritize that. So like many people, we just all sort of leave it in a stack, and it just is overwhelming. And that can create this big feeling of jumble and overload that can really cause that procrastination. How does one move forward?
Absolutely.
When that's going on?
Yeah, Esther, I think of just, I know this is an emotional issue, and this is, the transition is a huge piece of life. I kind of liken what you just said to my garage, because I have so much stuff in my garage. I've got kids, and so they've got some stuff in there, and I've got kids. I got stuff in my garage? Yeah. I've got my kids in the garage. They just can't hang out there. It's a really great spot. No, but I've got some of their stuff. I've got some of my grandkids' stuff. I've got my tools, my stuff. I walk in there to clean it and organize it, and you want to talk about overwhelmed and the feeling of I can procrastinate a bit on this, but women or anybody in transition, they can't procrastinate. I mean, I can put the garage off for a couple weekends, but I don't think they can.
Some of the things one can put off, but some one really cannot. I have a gentleman who lost his wife, a client who lost his wife, who is also a client this year. And something that happens in the current tax year is if he wanted to sell his home this year, he would be able to have a step up in basis due to what happens when one passes away. Your assets get a new basis.
Okay.
And while normally a step up in basis is in a home, one doesn't have to worry about having too much capital gain after that. But where we're living, she passed away earlier this year. Where we're living, prices have been pretty crazy this year and previous years. And so I wanted to make sure that he knew that if he did want to sell the house, he gets more of a capital gain exclusion in this year if he were to sell the home. Because she passed away during this tax year, he can still use her credit amount for selling the home and escape any other capital gains taxes that might happen. Again, it's a small chance, but just that is something that one really couldn't procrastinate on because it is a big deal selling a home, and I want
Yeah.
to make sure that my clients are aware of the things that go away or the opportunities that go away for them after the calendar flips over to the next year.
That makes sense. So, Esther, I know that during a time like that, it's got to be very difficult to make that. That's a major decision. Are there any type of exemptions or a way to extensions, I guess, is what I'm looking for?
There really isn't. There isn't anything that one can say, oh, my spouse passed away this year, so please give me an extension to October 15th of the year following to take advantage of this. That's really not there.
Got it. Oh, that's too bad. All right. So what's next on our list?
Well, the same thing when one is looking at how do we handle this overwhelm. It's, first of all, I always ask clients, just tell me everything. And we just put it all together, just get it all out together on one page or one piece of paper or 5 pieces of paper, whatever it takes. Yes, it can be paper. We still use paper. And just really look at it all together. And then I have different tools that I have access to that are fairly straightforward, but really effective. I'm part of the Sudden Money Institute, and we put together lists together of what do we need to take care of now. And it may be to confirm that there is enough cash flow, enough money to navigate through the next 3 months, 6 months. That is not a concern, that one can go through the emotional ups and downs of transition. If it's, again, a loss of a spouse, that one can attend to being with their family, whatever it is they need to do. And then the other items will set a date for this should be handled by such a date, i.e. re-registering accounts, going through the estate administration process. And then for later, it can be figuring out the rest of one's life. That takes years. So often people feel so much pressure, whether internally or it could be from family members, well-meaning family members, to make a lot of change because this happened. And I used the example earlier of the person selling their home. Typically, that's not something that one wants to do. In this case, the home is a rental, and you have even more time restriction if you want to sell a rental that was previously your personal residence.
Got it.
So that is something that, again, I just wanted the person aware of. It's not a push for this year. I just wanted to be sure that they were aware of it.
Absolutely.
Another termite that I have seen over the years many times is sitting with older portfolios without confirming that they're really aligned with a client's risk tolerance. When the markets are going up, which they basically have since 2009, March of 2009, the U.S. market's been very, very strong. It's easy to think, oh, I'm very risk tolerant. I'm comfortable with having so much in equities. And if one hasn't been in a structured portfolio management position where they're regularly reviewing their allocation, rebalancing, it's very possible that their U.S. equity allocation has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And when clients or prospective clients come in, they go, oh, yeah, I'm very risk tolerant. And yet one hasn't been through in the past 10 years, a year when the market has recorded a negative return. We've had some blips. We've had some 10% corrections along the way, but they've basically recovered within months and moved up. But one or more years of negative returns are very possible. In the last time I encountered this, before this current period, the last time I encountered this was the late 90s, when there was a lot of rush to going into the growth equities, the technology, the media, the telecommunications. And it was very hard to talk to people about boring things like bonds and why one might need bonds in a portfolio. But in the year 2000, with the tech bubble meltdown, the S&P 500 was down 9%. 2001, when we had 9/11, it was down almost 12% more. In 2002, when we had the Iraq War, it was down even 22% more. So that was 3 multiple years of negative returns. And it's very common that risk tolerance, if one hasn't checked it, confirmed it, that one feels a lot more comfortable with markets on the way up, A lot more tolerance there than with markets on the way down. And we really look at this it's very hard to measure. There is no particular scientific way to measure risk tolerance. We can all sit in the conference room and talk very objectively, but when the sky is falling, it's a very different experience. And the way that we do it is we have a software that we use that we have a live conversation that just shows if your portfolio was down this much, what would your comfort level be? Okay, how about this much? How about this much? And that's one way that we can check it in terms of just a client's gut reaction in the meeting. The other way that we check is really just stress testing our results in planning and showing what if your portfolio was down the way that it might have been in the year 2008. And we have a way to take their current portfolio, put it into software that shows this is how much your particular portfolio would have been down. What would that be like? And it's really testing it before it's basically doing simulation. They have flight simulation to learn how to handle crashes in airplanes or avoid crashes in airplanes. That's what we're trying to do here as well. I have a single professional woman client right now. She's moving into retirement in the next year or two. A very good example of someone who has lots and lots of U.S. equities. It's done incredibly well because that area of the market has done incredibly well. But we really want to make decisions based on forward-looking, the next 10 years, and not so much on the rear view, and really confirming, sitting down, we had that conversation with her, and she's very clear she wants to make those adjustments. In her case, like many, there's going to be capital gains taxes to pay making those changes. She's not one who is tax averse more than risk averse. There are those who do not want to pay taxes no matter what, and death and taxes, they're just those things that will never change. They will always be there. And so that can create a termite too. Just procrastinating paying taxes can leave one a lot more open to risk than the certainty of calculating how much tax one's willing to pay and creating a plan to take that amount and gain and keep diversifying the portfolio.
I assume that everybody's going to have their own separate risk tolerance. So how do you make sure that each individual has exactly what they need or what they want for their own situation?
Oh, that's a great question, Eric. That's a lot of what we work with each person. We don't create clients have very different portfolios for that reason. So how we check it is exactly what we've been going over in the podcasts. We create scenarios for clients based on what we've discussed as their own specific, very targeted goals. Mm-hmm. And then we stress test it and we say, what if scenarios? What if, again, in this particular case, what if the market declines? And then we use supplemental software to simulate what could happen to their portfolio if, for example, another 2008, God forbid, happened.
Yeah. So your software is individualized. You can plug anybody's numbers in, any of their risk tolerances in, and it actually does it just for them then.
Yes, it's two different softwares, but the software basically throws out the risk tolerance number for the client. Yeah.
Nice.
And then we can allocate according to that, and then keep the portfolio aligned. And then it's an ongoing living conversation. Risk is one of those things that does adjust over time. On the flip side, another termite is when people don't recheck their asset allocation, not because they feel tolerant about risk, but because they're really concerned about taking any risk. This is so much the story of the 2000s for many, because going through those 3 years that I mentioned, 2000, 2001, 2002, then we have some decent years, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it starts to go down. 8, of course, we had the big financial meltdown, first part of 2009, mm-hmm. and then we've been in recovery since. But going through 2000 to 2010, bonds outperformed equities. And people did not want to take that risk. They didn't want to go through it. It was our equivalent of the Great Depression. So when people wait too long to recheck their allocation, I've had several prospective turned into clients who came to me with the exact same situation. They had many, many invested dollars sitting in cash because they really didn't know which way to turn.
And why do you think that is?
Fear. basically fear. One of the podcasts that we talked to last time, the fear fear and lack of knowing, fear of going through something like that kind of decline again, where they saw the statement values drop so much, and being that much closer to retirement, not wanting to take too much risk, fear of not knowing how to allocate in such a way or who to trust to allocate so that they felt confident that they could live through the ups and downs. We talk a lot about, again, brain chemistry and how the brain works. The brain, we are wired to have a lot more anxiety about markets being down than we have exuberance when markets are up. So one has to build portfolios such that people can live through the downs, because we all know that there are down times. We all know that that will happen. We know that intellectually, but living through it is a very different experience. And we have to have the level of portfolio that we can sleep with at night. Maybe we have to give some upside, but it's a lot better to stay in and maintain an overall allocation that will give you those returns over long periods of time than it is to be either too under allocated so that one's not getting much of return at all and likely negative after inflation and tax, than it is to be in a good overall diversified allocation that one can live with. And that's better too than being too aggressive and saying, great, I'm making all these wonderful numbers. But then when the market's down, one never knows how long it's going to stay there. It could be 2 weeks. It could be 3 years. So one has to be able to navigate that. And we do that through our discussions, testing, being here quarter by quarter, reviewing the economic data and discussing with a client what we see on the horizon.
I would think that the fear of not knowing what to do and also not knowing who to trust would kind of keep you in limbo, searching for answers from friends or family, or using past examples as kind of your own guide. If you're afraid to reach out to somebody, how does that play into this?
It does. I think the financial services industry is a hard one for consumers to navigate. It's hard to understand what a CFP is versus a CFA versus all the other designations. I really appreciate what our Financial Planning Association does in terms of providing information out there, as well as the CFP board. Just what is a financial planner? What is an advisor? What does registered investment advisor mean? It's one of the reasons I feel it's very important to do this podcast, is to get information out there to help consumers understand what goes on behind the scenes on this side, what it is that we do for the clients.
How do you help somebody break that cycle, though, of just relying on their past experience, whether it's friends or family, or just seeking out advice from friends that don't know as much as a CFP would?
Well, I'd hope that they would come in. And when I see clients, they've already stepped in. They've come in at least to have an initial complimentary meeting to talk about what it is that they're facing and to hear about what it is that we do, what are the services that we offer. That's what I've seen as being very effective for people. We use tools as well, because another termite is relying too much on old messages about the past as predictor of the future. One of the examples I like to use on an emotional side is just we all have family members. My parents were models as well in terms of personal finance, and they weren't particularly good ones. The money messages were about, you can't have stability. Just from the experience that I lived through, it's not possible to have financial stability. Whatever you do, that wolf is going to come blow your house down. And so because of that, you always have to play small, which can mean not taking too much risk, not trying too much in your business or your career, because something is always going to take it away. And those are important things to really drill down and talk about. You typically don't talk about that on the first meeting, but there are things that we do grow in our relationship to talk about with clients. What were the messages that you had as a child around money, around your ability to maintain a financial foundation for yourself and grow that? Just creating that space to allow those discussions to happen is one of the ways to break through that. I know we talked last time that I have a financial planner as well, because it's important for me to put out there, these are the crazy things that my mind says, which kept me from taking risks, not in the market so much, but just in terms of how I spend my money, what I want to spend my money for. I also talked way in one of the earlier podcasts about my husband, David, and how he loved to travel. And I was saying, let's not travel until we have amassed this big pot of money, and then we can when you're, 70. And that was crazy. That's one of those crazy things. One can enjoy and appreciate life now, create a financial foundation, and the portfolio around that really serves that. So we're not masters of something we cannot control, which is the markets. We can't control them, but we can control the choices that we make to move forward and dig out and eliminate some of these termites. Bring them out in the open so we can really move forward with today's reality and not yesterday's.
That's right. Get them out in the open and squish them.
That's right.
All right. Do you have any other thoughts for today?
The only thing I would say the most common phrase that I've heard from clients who've worked with me is, oh my gosh, I wish I had done it sooner. So I just encourage anybody who's thinking, yes, I need to get this planning looked at. I need to have a portfolio review. Just go and get it done. Nobody can take over anything for you without your permission. That is also a concern that I've heard, is someone's going to come in and try and control. Have a conversation. See what it's like being on the other side of the table from the planner. What's the communication like? What's the conversation like? And just reach out and take a step out there. It could really mean all the difference for the rest of your life.
That's fantastic advice. And I encourage everyone to reach out to your office. How can they get a hold of you?
650-797-0280 or the website gatespassadvisors.com.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Women in Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Thank you again for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.